What's going on, guys? Shane here with my wife Marie.
Hey guys.
So Marie's been doing yoga for about 10 years now, but she just finished her 200 hours of yoga teacher training. And we've been talking and we found that there's a lot of parallels between martial arts and yoga. So today we're going to talk about how to get maximum benefit out of your stretching.
Yeah, and we're not just focusing on flexibility here, which is great, but we also want to focus on strength, which is why these are active stretches, not just passive.
Yeah, I mean, what I've noticed a lot of the times people argue flexibility is not good for fighters. They say, for instance, if you throw a high kick, you can get your leg up there high, but there's no strength behind the kick. Marie's going to show you a couple of exercises so that you can have flexibility and strength.
Yep.
Let's take a look.
So what we're focusing on today are active stretches versus passive stretches, and it's not that passive stretches are bad, but we'll typically reserve them for the end of a workout when you're already warm and you can lean into that stretch, and that's fine. But what we want to focus on are active stretches where we're really engaging all the muscles that are involved and warming up the body. So this can be done before a workout. And we're going to focus on whole body, but really on shoulders, upper back, hamstrings, glutes. Sore spots for everybody, but especially for fighters when you're really repping out kicks and punches, maybe lifting weights and doing body weight exercises. So you might recognize some of these stretches, you might not. We're just going to focus on a few key points for each movement so that you're getting the most out of it. We're going to start with just a really basic, like full body stretch, standing, side bend. But instead of just being very passive here where you're moving anywhere, we're going to be a little bit more active and purposeful in our movements. So Shane's going to stand with his feet, hips width distance apart, toes pointing forward. And we're going to have active legs here. So without moving the legs literally closer to each other, just feel like you're drawing the inner thighs towards one another. And you'll feel a little bit more stable in your base.
Yep.
Feel that? Great. And then the next thing is just to lift your arms up overhead so that your arms are in line with your ears. And if you're using shoulders a lot, you might not have mobility here where your arms are straight up. If your arms are out here, that's great. That's fine. It doesn't matter. But what we want to focus on is if we see Shane from the side, when we tend to bring our arms up overhead, what we do is we stick our rib cage out, our hips come back, and that's not what we want. What we want to do is really draw the front body, like the front of the rib cage, towards the back. And then similar to tucking the tailbone, you don't want to get rid of this low curve. Like that might be too much of a correction, whereas Shane can kind of add a little bit more of his natural lumbar curve here. And this is like a strong neutral spine. That's perfect. So then as Shane faces front again, we'll see that we're going to go into a side bend. So as Shane tilts towards his left, what he's going to do is really press in to the outer edge of his right foot so that he's getting the stretch from his pinky toe all the way up to his pinky finger. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to sway your hips, you wouldn't get that so much. That's right. So he's going to draw that hip towards center, keep both hips squared forward, and then he'll inhale, come back to center. And then exhale, come to the opposite side, this time pressing firmly into his outer left foot. And it's a really basic stretch, but you're going to feel a huge difference when you incorporate all these little motions. So the next stretch that we're going to do is just a forward fold, pretty much bending over to touch your toes. Except that's a common misconception, and the point of this is not to bend over and touch your toes. That's not where the benefit of the stretch is coming from. So we're going to see Shane. Again, you're going to have your feet hips width distance apart, toes pointing forward, active legs, and then he's going to bend over. And I'm sure this feels pretty decent for him, but we can still make it better and a little bit deeper of a stretch, more active. So first what we're going to do is we're going to shift Shane's weight into the balls of his feet without his heels coming off. And what this is doing is it's activating the hamstrings all the way up the back of the leg, and it's engaging them because they have to balance here. So now he's not only getting a deeper stretch, but his legs are working. Do you feel that?
Yeah, right up the back of both legs.
That's great. And it's okay to just round your spine here. The upper body can be passive. Really what we're focusing on is this lower body. How does that feel?
Good.
Great. So a way to make the upper body also active here is to half lift. So Shane's going to bring his fingertips to his shins, and he's going to allow his chest to come parallel to the floor. Good. Similar to the overhead stretch, how like our rib cage tends to pop out, that might be happening here, where Shane feels like his back is rounding. So what he's going to do again is firm his rib cage into his body, towards the back body, and he's going to draw his shoulders down and away from his neck. How does that feel?
Good. I feel like I'm being worked.
Yeah, so that's really going to use all of the back muscles. That's good. And you can release here to stretch. Now, you can do this a few times, rep it out, and it's going to feel like its own warm-up or workout. So another way to make this maybe even a little bit more challenging for the upper body is, instead of resting his hands on his shins, what he's going to do is he's going to bring his hands parallel, or his arms parallel to his ears like he did in the overhead stretch. And again, that's going to make it even more easy for his ribs to pop out. So that challenge is to come back to that neutral spine, shrugging his shoulders down his back. Good. And again, if your arms are all the way out here because you don't have the mobility in your shoulders, that's okay. So this next stretch you might not recognize. It's super simple, but this is definitely more yoga than traditional stretching. So Shane's going to come onto all fours, tabletop position, which is just his wrists underneath his shoulders, his knees underneath his hips. We call it a tabletop position because essentially he's making a flat back like a tabletop. So again, here you want to draw that rib cage in towards your back. It's going to firm up the back body, and you're going to feel all of those side and back muscles engaging to keep your back active. So if I were to tell Shane to round his back and drop his head, allowing his tailbone to tuck, this is a really nice stretch for the back body. But we can make it a little bit deeper by telling him to press really firmly into your hands, and you're going to let your shoulder blades come down your back, and you're going to fill this back body. And that's pretty challenging, right?
Yeah.
Good. We want it to be challenging. So then the opposite of this would be to drop his belly, lift his hips, lift his head. Also good there. But if he can bring his belly button even closer to the ground, tilt his tailbone up higher, and what we want to feel is the energy of his chest coming through his arms and up. Does that feel deeper?
Yeah, much.
Yeah. So this is really using the shoulders, the back, the hips. It's opening all of that up while using them and strengthening them at the same time. And then you can exhale, round your spine again. And then on an inhale, he'll lift his chest forward and up, dipping the stomach. Again, keep breathing. Whatever's comfortable for you. Inhale in either pose, exhale in either pose, but always breathe. That's the most important part. The next stretch is called a downward dog. And what Shane's going to do from this tabletop position is he'll lift his knees, begin to straighten his legs, and lift his hips up and back to the sky. And the goal here isn't to get the heels onto the ground, which most people think is the case. What we want is just all of the energy moving up and back. So first we're going to focus on the upper body. Shane's hands are going to press firmly into the ground, and his biceps are going to roll forward, which is really rotating the shoulders out along with the arms. And then he's going to shrug his shoulders down his back, leaving a space between that area from his ears to his shoulders. And as he does that, it'll begin to lengthen his body. He'll be lifting his hips up and back. That's good. And you'll see that Shane's heels aren't touching the ground. Like I said, that's fine. And even if he were to bend his knees, that's fine too. With his upper body in place, he just wants that energy like his heels are pressing towards the ground, and he'll feel that stretch in his hamstrings. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
And this is a challenge. There's really a lot of weight on your hands, and there's a really deep stretch happening through the back and the legs, and you'll feel that mobility really being worked here. The next stretch that we're going to do is a lunge, which is pretty much all for the hips and hip mobility. So Shane just shift forward into that tabletop position again, and then he'll swing his right foot forward so it's on the outside of his right hand. And in the passive version of this, Shane might be putting a lot more weight into the back leg and just hanging out, or he might be leaning too much into the front leg, which, again, these passive stretches aren't bad as long as you're safe, but we want to activate it so that everything's working. So Shane will keep his fingertips or palms on the ground, whichever is accessible for you. And to activate this front leg, press your front knee into your bicep or tricep while pushing your tricep back into your knee. Do you feel that?
Yeah, on the outside of my right leg.
Yeah, so you're going to feel a lot more of the stretch on the outer leg. It's working, but it's also lengthening that area. And then you don't want to leave the left leg or the back leg hanging. So what we're going to do is you could lift the knee. So tuck the toes, lift the knee, and really pull that knee up towards the ceiling. You're activating the thigh. You really want to be drawing it up. And then at the same time, you'll be pressing back with the heel to really lengthen. So now it's the front hips getting a stretch, but the back legs working to keep it active. If you do a modification, you can drop the back knee, but you still want it to be active. So you're gonna have this feeling without moving your feet, like you're drawing your knee, your back knee, and your front foot towards one another. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna activate the front of the back hip and the back of the front leg. All right, guys, so there's 5 stretches that you can add to your warm-up, or if you're already doing them, try to add these little different cues to see if you can go a little bit deeper. And what's great about yoga is you can combine all of them into one sequence, and then it's one movement that you can incorporate in your warm-up. You can hold each of these poses for 5 to 10 breaths, and I say breaths instead of just like a 5 to 10 count, because by really focusing on your inhales and exhales, you will be there for quite some time, but you're going to get to go deeper, and you'll be more present with each movement. So real quick, instead of the 5 to 10 breath count, what you can do is maybe 1 to 2 breaths, but then repeat it on both sides, maybe 5 to 10 times total. So I'll show you what like a quick sequence of all of these combined might look like. So first, Shane's gonna start with sweeping his arms overhead for this side body stretch. That might come up on an inhale, he'll exhale to the side. Inhale, come back up, exhale to the side. Great. And then he'll inhale, come back to center, and he'll exhale, fold forward into that forward fold that we talked about. Shifting the weight forward, inhale, come up with a half lift, really using that back body to lift. And then on an exhale, he'll lower, bring his hands to the mat, knees to the mat. Now he's in that tabletop position. We're coming back to what's called a cat and a cow, which is the dipping of the belly, the rounding of the spine, and going and moving the spine in opposite directions. That's great. And you can do a few rounds of these here. From here, he'll lift his knees and go back into a down dog position, just like we talked about. You still want to focus on shrugging the shoulders down the back, lifting the hips up, bending the knees if you have to. Great. And then from here, he can bring his knees to the ground or just swing his right foot forward, coming into his lizard lunge. And then here he can keep the back knee down or he can lift it, and you can stay here for a few breaths. And then on an exhale, he'll step that foot back. He can come back into a down dog, and then he'll come into the other side. So he'll bring his left leg forward. That's great. After a few breaths, he'll step that one back, down dog, and then from here, he could do another cat-cow. You guys could do another round of absolutely everything. And then from the cat-cow, what you can do is just step your feet forward. You'll come back to standing and start from the beginning. So that's a really simple flow. It's a great way to warm up the body from head to toe, really.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. So this is basic yoga, but very beneficial for your training as a martial artist. If you'd like to see more, definitely comment down below. We can cover things like breath work, meditation, more flexibility, and strengthening exercises. Until then, I'm Shane.
I'm Marie.
Fight tips for the underdogs.